we are just completing this poll to begin our session on whether we use artificial intelligence in our TEFL studies or in our teaching already. Most of the responses have come in. In fact, all of them have come in now. And surprisingly, I expected this to go the other way. Surprisingly, only 35% of us have actually used AI in our teaching before. So around 2/3 of us have never used AI to help us learn or in the classroom to help our students. So that is interesting. It's maybe not as integrated as we might think it is, but if you're not using it now, you certainly will be down the line. AI is here to stay, and it's already having a considerable impact on education in general and on language teaching and learning in general. So on that note, we might begin our session today. Again, a thumbs up, please, if you can see my PowerPoint. Very good. So, as you're probably all aware, we're going to be looking at today AI in TEFL, AI meaning artificial intelligence. So specifically, we're going to look at the following. We're going to look at, well, why? Why this session? Why the need to talk about this topic? Why is it relevant? I'm going to give you a bit of a rationale as to why we as teachers need to start thinking about how we can best integrate AI into our practice and how that will help our students. After we've done that, I want to hear a little bit from you. I know from the poll that most of us have not used AI, so you might not be too aware of how we can use it, what its benefits are, and of course, some challenges around the use of AI. But we will have a conversation around those points today as well. Now, I'm aware we only have an hour for this session, but I do want to look at ChatGPT specifically because it is probably the most known example of AI and one that is quite widely used already in ELT. So we'll look at ChatGPT as an example and look at some ways in which we can use ChatGPT to help us as language teachers. And then we will address questions and have a look at some resources that we can start playing around with in our practice. Okay, so in the chat, please, before I give you my rationale as to why we need to, as teachers, start learning about, start educating ourselves on AI, I want you to share your ideas with me and with each other first. So I would ask you now in the chat, take a minute or so and have a think. Why do you think it's worthwhile that we are here today? Why should we take it on ourselves to learn about AI? Don't worry if you're not sure. Whatever you think is what I'm curious to see. So take a minute or so and pop your ideas in the chat for me. Again, the point I want you to have a think about is why we as teachers need to learn about AI. Why is this important? Why is it relevant? Just looking through the chat, I see quite a few of us are from different parts of the world. Always nice to have an international audience. The session is being recorded, Marie, and I will put the PowerPoint in the chat as well so that you can access the resources at the end. So I'm seeing some comments come in. Again, take a minute or so and have a think. How can AI, or why learn about AI? Why are we here today? Okay, I can see the comments coming in already in the chat. So let's have a quick look at them. So Anna says it is a very useful tool. It is indeed. And we'll have a look specifically as to how it can be useful for us as language teachers. It can be a superpower. It absolutely can. But it certainly comes with its challenges. And it's important that we consider those as well. Thanks for that, Ryan. Cheryl, students are using or will be using it. Yes, and that is a key point. Even if you're not using it, you need to assume that your students are. And are they using it properly? Are they using it ethically? Are they using it to help them learn? Or are they taking advantage of it and using it in unethical ways? That's an interesting point, Cheryl, and one that we will address. To engage the students allows cohesion and shows learning informally. Yes, students like to see that teachers are keeping abreast of technological developments, that teachers are actually using the technologies that they use to help them learn. That's an interesting point. Katya, our students are using it, so if we don't learn to use it, yes, again, this idea that our students are already adopting it, so we need to match them and keep up. It will be helpful when I want to use an existing lesson to adapt it to the students' needs. That's an interesting point. AI can certainly give you a lot of ideas around how you can adapt lesson plans to suit your particular classroom contexts and your students. AI is being used as a tool in all spheres of life. It absolutely is. And I think it's of particular relevance in education. It does raise some interesting questions around how do we assess our students? How do we use it in ethical ways? How can we avoid things like plagiarism and so on? But yes, AI is really taking charge, if you like, in a lot of areas, and it is here to stay, and it's only going to grow exponentially. Yes, it can very much help with lesson planning. And again, we'll look at some examples of how we can use AI to help us with lesson planning way quicker. Okay, so this idea of efficiency, teachers work very, very hard. And if you have a lot of classes and need to prepare a lot of lesson plans and materials and so on, you will certainly find that AI can speed up the process for you and so on. Okay, there are a lot of comments in the chat, and I can see that we all have some good ideas around how AI can be useful. Thank you for those. Let's come back now to my PowerPoint, and I'm going to give you a couple of points that I think are important to consider when it comes to considering or when it comes to why we need to learn about AI as teachers. So here you can see the rationale for learning about AI. Why learn about it? And the first point there is that post-pandemic, AI has really flourished, and it's already well embedded or becoming established in ELT. A lot of teachers around the world are using AI already, aware of how beneficial it is or can be. And AI is here to stay. It is going to grow exponentially in the years to come. We're in what we call a weak phase of AI, where we're not really sure how it's going to look or what kind of influence it's going to have on education. And we're going to move from a weak phase towards a more strong phase of AI, where it is here to stay and very much shapes what we do as educators. Also, or in that vein, we do have a responsibility as teachers to keep current and to keep up with the rapid development of AI. And we need to educate ourselves on how exactly we can use AI to help us lesson plan, to help us deliver lessons, to help us design tests, to help us assess our students and our learners, to help us make resources to guide students on how to use AI effectively and how to really reap the benefits and be aware of and avoid the pitfalls that come with AI as well. And we call this, or this whole idea of raising our digital literacy as professionals. Digital literacy essentially means how proficient we are in the use of technology in general and specific technologies for teaching purposes. Okay. And then that final point is one that you have touched on already, and it's very relevant here. The fact that many students are already using AI, but do they know how to use it correctly? Are they aware of how it can be used and what its specific benefits and challenges are? So, yes, I think we all have a good sense of this is relevant, this is important, and it is time for us as teachers to start engaging with AI. So let's move on. Back to you now. I want you in the chat to have a think about the following question on the screen. Before I give you some ideas, what do you think are some of the uses, benefits, and challenges of using AI in TEFL? So let's break this down. Uses, how can we use it in our classrooms? How can we use it for lesson planning? Think about things like designing full lesson plans or having AI come up with ideas for starting a lesson or ending a lesson, or having AI generate resources for us, worksheets, tests, flashcards, and so on. How exactly can we use AI to help us become better lesson planners and to be more effective in our delivery of lessons? Then think of the benefits. So how can AI help us? You've already touched on some of these in the chat. It can speed things up. It can make the process of preparing for lessons and delivering lessons a lot easier and so on. But think of some other benefits. And then I'd be curious to see what challenges you come up with. I'm going to stop my screen share here and I'm turning it over to you. Take about 2 minutes, and then in the chat, once you've come up with an idea or two, I want you to pop them in the chat for me. So again, what are some uses of AI? What are some benefits of using AI? And by AI, if you're not entirely sure, we mean artificial intelligence. So things like machine translation tools, chatbots like ChatGPT, lesson plan generators, those kinds of technologies. How can we use them? How can they help us? And what potential challenges might they pose? Take 2 minutes or so, and when you're ready, pop your ideas in the chat for me. Okay, so I can see that there are some ideas poured into the chat. Would anyone like to unmute at this point and share their thoughts? So what do we think? Let's maybe start with the uses of AI. How can we use AI as teachers to help us? Okay. Let's have a look at the chat. And if any point you would like to unmute and speak, absolutely feel free to. So I see Aisha, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, has said it makes things easy to understand and instead clearance of a doubt. Aisha, would you like to come in that point and maybe just elaborate a little bit? So make things easy to understand. It certainly can if we're unsure about something. For example, a grammar point, we could put it into ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to generate an explanation of it for us. Or we could ask it to generate a student-friendly explanation of it for us so that students could understand it. Okay, that's certainly one idea. You can interact with it in that human way and ask it questions to clarify things you don't understand as a teacher. And grammar is one area of teaching that some teachers find quite challenging. So that could be a potential use for sure. Before I come back to challenges, I'm just going to have a look at uses first. Saeem has said, could free up time to focus on students more. Interesting point that. Saeem, would you like to come in on that? No pressure now, but if you'd like to. An interesting point, though, this idea that we can individualize our teaching a little bit more and be more aware of what's actually happening in the room or online if we're online teaching, and focus on whether our students are learning what we want them to be learning instead of worrying about, for example, the materials we're using or the presentation we're using and so on. Interesting point that. Let me come to Laronda's point about a challenge and how the accuracy of the information can be an issue. Okay, I think that's one that we can all agree on. Laronda, would you like to come in and elaborate on this point?
Well, excuse me. How do I know when I'm using Chat GPT, or if I decide trust it enough to use it? How do I know where are they getting the information? Is it accurate? Is it updated? Is it current information? And how much work am I going to have to do to double check the information that I've gotten from AI?
That's an excellent question. And it is one of the obvious challenges when it comes to ChatGPT. So basically, it pools its information from tons and tons and tons of online sources, but with it being an American invention, it does have a strong preference for American. For example, the language model that it will use will be American English, and this is an issue in language teaching. If you're working with a group of students who aren't learning American English, but yet ChatGPT is generating all the worksheets in American English, using American spelling, using American vocabulary, American English vocabulary, then you would manually have to change all of that. So that is an interesting. Yes,
can
go
you
ahead.
can you ask it to generate work in like British English or another
You
language?
absolutely could. So that's something you would have to do manually. You'd have to go back and say, or include it in your initial prompt. Can you please generate a worksheet on this topic, but for students who are using British English? So you would type that into the box here. So let's say, for example, our students are learning about the past simple tense. Create a worksheet on the past simple tense. Let's say they're only learning about regular verbs. We don't want them to focus on irregular verbs yet. So we can say using only regular verbs and make the worksheet or use British English in creating the worksheet. You could even say, for example, with examples relevant to British culture, if you wanted to adapt the relevance of the material. So here, for example, it generates automatically the worksheet. We can see from the examples here that they are very much relevant to the United Kingdom, about the Queen, British Museum. You will notice spellings are British English spellings, Buckingham Palace, FA Cup, and so on. So we can actually use it to and adapt it to the variety of English that we are teaching our learners. And again, if you were teaching, for example, if you were teaching a group of students Irish English or Australian English or New Zealand English, or even a non-native variety of English, like English as a lingua franca, so international English, you can make those adaptations as well. But that is certainly something that we need to consider when using ChatGPT. Is it pushing a particular model of English over another? And then just the general accuracy of the information. You do need to check it to make sure that it is correct. But at the same time, I would say anywhere from 80% plus of the time, it is generally okay. I have used ChatGPT before and in a rush, not really carefully proofread resources and then notice little mistakes in lessons. But for the most part, it is quite okay in that respect.
What about the Chinese, I forget the name of it. I've heard that it's
DeepSeek.
I've heard it's supposed to be, yeah, I've heard that it's supposed to be even more accurate than ChatGPT and other AI programs.
And that's the claim. I haven't personally used it. Has anyone used it? I'd be curious about that.
Sorry, which are the DeepSeek?
Yeah, DeepSeek.
Yeah,
Have you used it,
I
Celine?
personally used it. Yeah, it's quite comprehensive. Yes, especially for the academic, science, aviation, business. All these contexts I used it, and yeah, it's quite good. Providing information is not exactly the same as ChatGPT. The vocabulary, the structure of the sentences, and overall the context is different, but providing yeah, quite good information.
How? I'd be curious about how is it different?
Not in sense of the result different, but in terms of the paragraphs, the way it uses the words and vocabularies, and the structure is slightly different than what we actually get from the ChatGPT.
Is it
Okay, interesting.
is it different in the sense that it's probably structured the way maybe a non-English or non-native English speaker would structure something? Is that what you mean when you say the sentence structure and how the words are?
Yes. So what is basically we know that the mind and the component of DeepSeek, it's not British, it's not American, it's Chinese, and it's
Right.
Asian. So the way the DeepSeek think and analyze data and information overall is the same. For example, if you ask the benefits of paracetamol, or what could I get for, let's say, for painkillers or for migraine, you would get, eventually you get the same result, but not the same information.
Huh.
The overall, the data and the information are slightly different.
Okay.
That's very interesting. And what would be fascinating, in my opinion, would be to use both and compare how they differ, because
This is what I do. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Yeah. It's actually
exactly.
broaden our vision. It gives us actually more kind of opportunities to compromise and then choose which one is the right for us, for what context we use it.
Absolutely. Because teaching is so context specific, and teaching is quite subjective in a sense as well. It's teaching in a classroom in Argentina could look very different to how a similar language lesson would look in South Korea. So I think that idea of comparing and seeing how they differ would be very, very insightful indeed. But Celine, thank you for that. I appreciate that.
No problem. You're welcome.
Would anyone else like to come in on that point? Has anyone else got experience using DeepSeek or any other chatbots? I know ChatGPT is the predominant one.
One thing I find really useful in terms of creating content is that, let's say I could use ChatGPT to come up with a text on a very niche topic. If I have a one-to-one lesson with someone who really wants to practice, I don't know, they work in the pharmaceutical industry, for example. And then what I have used is another AI tool. I think it was called 11 Labs, if I'm not mistaken. It's like text to speech. So I could create listening resources that way. And that's really useful when we don't have a book. And sometimes with business English or English for a specific industry type of courses, that's like a lifesaver. I don't have to go digging for hours. It saves so much time. And you can have the tool speak with a certain accent if you want your students to practice and get used to an Irish accent from Cork, let's say. So that can be really helpful.
Very interesting. And this idea of inclusivity then, that it's accommodating different varieties of English and not the more predominant ones. Thank you for that, Kathy. I've done that as well, actually created listening transcripts and listening audios using different tools online. TurboScribe, I think, is the name of the one that I use most often. You do have to pay a subscription for it, but it will generate, you can either enter in an audio of some kind, like a YouTube video, a song, and it will generate the transcript for you. Or I think you can go the other way round, where you enter in the transcript, and then as Katya said, it will generate the corresponding audio. And there are so many benefits to that. You can tailor the listening material that you're using with your learners. Again, you can change the accent. And sometimes learners need to actually see what they're hearing to connect. Oh, okay, that's what that was. And then you can do exercises around vocabulary as well, use the transcript for writing exercises and so on. So that is a really nice use of AI. Thanks for that, Katja. Before we look at challenges and...
Sorry, could I add one more thing? There is
yes, please.
I just recently attended our annual conference here in Birmingham in the UK. There's one more AI which is very good for teaching purposes, called Cloud, CLAUD, I think. This is
pop
for
that in the chat. Just
is for generating texts and class activities, everything, and is very, very useful. Here we use it in the UK a lot, and I would definitely recommend for all dear teachers out there.
And Salim, is that a chatbot like ChatGPT, or is it a different type of?
Yeah, is in the same context. They generate the same information. Is capable, is quite highly capable for particularly for teaching languages, any kind of language, for generating text, lesson plans, activities, tasks, grammar, everything else. Yeah, it's quite good.
Very good. And does it have any particular advantage over ChatGPT, would you say?
It's because this is mainly for educational purposes and mainly for the teaching language. So overall, the is much more higher performance and capable of performing what actually English language or language teachers are needed around the world.
Okay, interesting. Thanks. To have one that is specifically a chat box targeted at education specifically. Thanks
Yes,
for that.
even with very the basic and the free version is quite capable, and you can do a lot with that one. With the simple account, when you use it, you can straight away log in with your Gmail account.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that.
No problem at all.
I'd be curious to hear from a couple of others. Would anyone else like to come in and just share their experience of using AI? There is no right or wrong way as such to use it.
Hi there. Hi
Hello.
everybody. Sorry, I was trying to use the chat box there, but I've just, well, I better say something or I'll not get my
Probably
answer.
got buried in all the messages.
No, what I was wondering was, in regards to actually sorry, I'm not maybe like some of yourselves, but sorry to sort of go backward a bit here, but to actually implement it straight on, if I have a Zoom opened, do I put in the Chat GPT 40? Is that the source then to integrate it in if you were using it, or to have it?
I mean, in terms of just using ChatGPT, how to get started using it?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, just Google, and then if you type in ChatGPT and come down to maybe the third link here, for example, and you can actually start using it straight away without being logged in, I believe. I'm logged into my own personal Gmail account here, but you can use it for a bit. There might be a limit without being logged in. And then you type pretty much anything into it. So thinking about language teaching, for example, lesson planning, I know, is a key area for teachers and one that they might sometimes struggle with. So let's get it to produce a lesson plan for us, just to show you what it might look like. So create a full 40-minute lesson plan on the topic of holidays. What I'm doing here is entering in the prompt, and the more specific the prompt, the better the lesson plan. So let's specify the learner level, for example. For B1 level learners of British English, so we'll specify the variety of English they are learning. Those of you who have come across it in the course, you might be familiar with what we call the PPP framework for lesson planning. That pretty much means presentation, practice, production. Use the PPP lesson framework, and we'll ask it as well to include a filler activity. So this is if the lesson finishes early, do I have something else that I can use with the students? And a homework activity, for example. That's our prompt. We put it in like this, and then it'll generate a lesson plan. And you can see it looks like a lesson plan that you would actually do for our course, or one that you might fill in on a different course. We have our title. We can see how long the lesson is, what type of lesson it is. It's a vocabulary lesson with a speaking focus, what the topic is. It's listed some vocabulary they're going to learn on the topic of vocabulary. We have our lesson aims here. These are the materials we need as a teacher in preparing for this lesson. And then it's broken it down stage by stage with our warmer or our lead in, 5 minutes. Students are to answer these questions. Then how we might present our new words. These are the target language words that we want to teach in this lesson: sightseeing, accommodation, travel agent, and so on. Then practice. There's a gap fill activity. And we could ask ChatGPT to create the worksheet for this gap fill activity. So I might even put that in at the bottom. We can see our production task here, our filler activity, a game of holiday charades. If there's time at the end, a couple of minutes for feedback and error correction, and then set the homework task. And I'm going to ask it now to create the gap fill activity for the practice stage instead of me making that up myself. Let's just see what it generates. And it's basing this worksheet on my previous prompt as well. So you can see here, okay, B1 level learners, this worksheet is for. It's specifically for the practice stage of the lesson, and it includes 8 sentences using the key vocabulary that I'm teaching in this lesson. So this is what it looks like. These are the key words that I am introducing in this lesson. Here is the worksheet. You would print this and get students to complete these gaps. They could maybe check their answers in pairs, and then you go through this as a whole class. And it's also given me an optional extension. But let's say I look at this and decide, no, I actually don't like this. I want to do something else. I might come in and say, suggest 3 different activities for the practice stage of this lesson. Okay. And then instead of a gap fill, it's getting us to, here is a words to definitions matching task. So our 8 keywords or so that we're teaching, the learners have to match the words to the actual definitions of the words. You could cut up these words, break them up into pairs or groups, and have them physically match the word to the definition, and then maybe put them on the board. And then they could compare other groups, words, and definitions. Or a holiday dialogue completion task. This would get them speaking. So you could get them to actually complete the blanks and then say the dialogue or perform the dialogue in pairs. Then you could take the dialogue away from them and have them reproduce it without looking. So those are some alternative activities that we could use. If we wanted to make this shorter, that was quite a long lesson plan. Make this all shorter and more usable. So we get a more condensed version of this lesson plan. So my prompt wasn't specific enough here, and what it's actually gone doing is just making the practice stage activities more condensed. So I need to be more specific in my prompt. So I'm going to say, no, produce the same lesson plan in a much more condensed version. Let's see what it comes up with here. Okay, so it's taken away quite a bit here. And then I could, if I wanted to, print out this lesson plan, for example, have it on the desk while I'm teaching this lesson. If I don't remember what my keywords are, I could come straight, or I could have a quick glance at it. Okay, look at the words. Or if I don't remember what the production task is, I could glance at my lesson plan again. And a nice idea here, and something that I do, would be to copy and paste this lesson. So I would actually copy and paste this. It's quite short, very usable. I would paste it into a Microsoft Word document, and I'd store that lesson plan away after I've adjusted it. And I have a lesson plan on the topic of holidays that I can use with future classes. And in that way, that's just one way that we can use ChatGPT to generate content for us, in this case, lesson plans, okay? But it might not be lesson plans that you want it to give you ideas on. Maybe you want it to show you how to, you know, list 10 ways that I can start a lesson in 3 minutes, or give me 5 ways to engage learners who don't like my class, or suggest 10 homework activities that involve learners speaking. Anything at all that you're struggling with, if you need ideas, if you need inspiration, ChatGPT and the other chatbot tools that were mentioned by Salim and others will give you an abundance of ideas that you can then play around with. But the key is to be as specific as you can be with your prompt and to adapt whatever it produces. And in that way, you'll have lesson plans, materials, and ideas to last you for a long, long time. Okay, so that's just one example. Would anyone like to come in on that?
Sorry, could you repeat your initial question again, please? What was this first question you asked to ChatGPT? Thank you.
To ChatGPT. So
Yes.
this was my initial prompt. If I go all the way back to the top, this here. So this is what I wanted it to do. And I could be even more specific than this. So I've said how long I want the lesson to be, what the topic of the lesson is, the language level of the learners, the type of English that I'm teaching, the actual lesson framework that I want. I've asked it to include a filler activity, a homework activity. I could add some more details here if I wanted. For example, differentiate this lesson, or come up with 2 extra activities that I can use with students who finish tasks quicker than others, or suggest a quick speaking activity not included in this lesson plan. Anything else at all. The more specific and the more detail you can include in your prompt, the better the output will be from ChatGPT.
I have a question.
Yes.
Sorry again if I'm coming across
No
like
problem.
I really
No
am so
problem.
sorry. So if I had like Zoom opened, yes, and I was like trying to really engage the students, and I want to show a bit of artificial intelligence, because as we know, all schools now implement it from a young age, and it is the way the world is going, like it or not. So hopefully it will be integrated and we keep up the essence of teaching as well, and the human aspect, and we'll work together on it. But anyhow, so if I have the Zoom, sorry for being very basic here, I have the Zoom, can I integrate that into the lesson? Say I was taking this lesson now, would I be able to use that, you know, like to go out into groups, or am I, is there anything that you could direct me with that, or sorry?
So the way I'm sharing my screen here and have ChatGPT open, you could do the exact same in an online lesson. So if I go back to the start, for example, let me open ChatGPT again. ChatGPT. So let's say we are in a lesson now. And if I open ChatGPT and I have it open in a screen share, I could, let's say I'm working with students on the topic of sports, okay? And I've taught them some words and they're able to say maybe what their favorite sport is, whatever. You could start the lesson by getting your students to, I don't know, come up with a list of 10 sports in English, okay? And create sample sentences. So this might be a nice way to revise vocabulary from the last lesson. So let's see, okay? It's numbering the sports here, and we have sample sentences with the target language sports in them. We could all want me here, so see how, want me to turn these into a worksheet or a quiz. Let's just type in yes, please, and see what it does.
That's amazing.
Right here, we're in the lesson. It's now generated a worksheet with different tasks. Part A here, for example, I've already taught students these words, these sports in the last lesson. Now they need to match these sports to the description of the sports below. Then they move on to part B and they have to put the sports into the right blanks. Part C, they have questions. You could put them in breakout rooms for these questions. They discuss these questions and come back to the main room, and then you have them feed back to the class. They could write answers to these questions and so on. And then you can see here, let me know if you want this as a printable PDF or with images added. You can actually have ChatGPT convert this worksheet into a PDF. You save that on your laptop, and right there you have a PDF, a worksheet on the topic of sports that you could recycle with classes for years and years. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you,
You're
thank you, thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank
That's
you.
just one idea. There are so many different ways that you could use ChatGPT here, and live in a lesson as well in response to what's happening in the lesson. Okay. So I'll stop my screen share there. Would anyone else like to come in? Would anyone else like to ask a question or comment on how to use AI, in particular ChatGPT, or any other obvious benefits they see with it or challenges they think it raises?
I would suggest to use ChatGPT or any other AI facilities, mainly preparing and before entering into the class. So in this way, we can give more opportunity and leave the time for the student to use their productive skills and speak more, work more, and we as teachers to be only the facilitator and not being exactly on the center of the lessons, except as and when needed. The facilities are there to use it, but I would rather use that not during the lesson, but rather prepare and use it before, and then like pass the ball to learners, to students, to use it and ask a question. This is what I think is the right way.
Now, something I've been noticing with my students is some of them are using AI, using ChatGPT to write essays for them or to do assignments for them. And I've been thinking about ways of how I can avoid that and how I can determine that it's actually them who are producing the work. So you need to think about, for example, what I did recently was I had AI write an essay with mistakes in it, and I then gave the students the essay and they had to actually identify and correct the mistakes and then rewrite the essay in class using pen and paper. That's just one way of using it, but you need to, how do you know if students are using it appropriately outside of class? You could maybe get them to come up with something using AI, and then in class, they have to adapt it or make changes to it or improve it in some way. So AI can be used outside of class, or it can be used live in lessons as well. It certainly has applications in both settings, but obviously plagiarism and inappropriate use of AI is a very, very obvious challenge. And it's something that you need to think about. And you will know straight away if your students are, if they are abusing it or not. And somebody made a comment in the chat about the human quality of teaching, and AI can take over that. So you do need to keep that as well. But my final point here, I am conscious of the time. There's so much to talk about here. You can only really scratch the surface in an hour. My main advice to you would be to just experiment, to play around with it. If you're not comfortable, if you've never used it before, which the majority of us in this session haven't, I would say the next time you teach, before you teach that lesson, go on to ChatGPT and use it in some way to help you prepare for that lesson. Be it to generate some ideas for you, be it to explain to you how you're going to present new words in that lesson, be it what homework assignment you're going to give students, be it how you're going to use group work in that lesson, be it how you might use a game in that lesson. Use it in some way. Start experimenting with it. And in that way, you'll get a clearer sense of how it can be beneficial for you in your particular context. It's also important to remember that it's not the be all and end all. AI doesn't replace good teaching. Good teaching should be front and center in your classrooms, and AI and technology in general are supporting supplementary tools that you are using in different ways. But what comes first is the teaching and the pedagogy and the assessing whether your learners are learning or not and how you respond to that. And then you use AI to supplement all of that. Okay. Are there any final contributions before we finish today? Would anybody like to ask me anything, ask each other anything, or come in with any final comments on the topic of AI in language teaching?
Could you add some your own way, your own suggestions, asking questions? So I think that could kind of give a light to the end of the tunnel for everyone else as well. And then every individual can then personalize that question according to their own needs and situations in the classes, mate.
Of course. So give me what do you mean by, so give me an example, as in,
Do you know, for example, you know, your initial request or initial question on the ChatGPT. So
okay, here, for example.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, just some I use ChatGPT a lot in my practice, and these would be different things that I would use ChatGPT for. So lesson plan creation, like the one that I did earlier in the session. It might be create an 80-minute lesson plan for advanced learners who are learning about the topic of health and fitness, for example. You could also use it like this. Come up with something I did recently was I created a big poster and I've hung it up in my classroom for myself more so. And it is, come up with a list of, I did something like this, 10 ways to, and then I've listed the main things that I think are important for teachers. So 10 ways to present new language, assess learners during the lesson, start lessons, finish lessons, fillers to use if a lesson ends early, homework assignments, games to use with my learners. And if we put in something like ways to test my learners instead of a traditional pen and paper test. So I had to think about, okay, I want ideas in all of these different areas of teaching. If we put it in, and what I've actually done is I read through all of them. I looked at the ones I liked. I asked it to change some of them. And then I've made a big planning poster that I stuck to the wall in my classroom. And when I plan lessons now, I go to that poster and I look at, okay, today we're presenting vocabulary on food. How am I going to do this? I'm going to use a video clip today because I haven't used one in a while and I want it to be an authentic video clip. So I need to go onto YouTube and find a video clip. Great, found one. I'm using this video. How am I going to assess learners in this lesson? So after I've presented the new language, I'm going to hold up pictures of the new words. If they know the word, they have to put their thumbs up. If they don't, they put their thumbs down. That's going to be what we call a formative assessment check. So in the lesson, I'm doing something that shows me as the teacher, okay, they get it or they don't get it. I can move on, or I need to go back and reteach it. And you have so many different ideas here. And these are all things that I've done. Think, pair, share. Get them to share their ideas with a partner, and then they feed back to the group. I have many whiteboards in my classroom. So in this lesson, I might get them to draw 5 foods, swap the mini whiteboard with the person beside them, and then the person beside them has to label the 5 foods. Or exit tickets. So at the end of the lesson, they have to write down 3 foods that they knew from the lesson already and 3 new foods that they learned. They give me the exit ticket, and that way very quickly I can check. Okay, they know how to spell the food. They knew these already. I probably didn't need to teach these, and so on. So these are all different ways that I can formatively assess my learners during the lesson. Then I might say, okay, next lesson, how am I going to start it? I'll go to the poster on my wall and I might do a brainstorm this time because I haven't done a brainstorm in a while with my students. So on the board, word cloud, food in the middle. Can you think of different foods? Can you think of different ingredients? Can you think of different adjectives to describe food? This is tasty. This is delicious. This is spicy. Can we think of different verbs we use to talk about food? I eat, I drink, I enjoy, I cook, and so on. Then I might go, okay, how am I finishing this lesson on food? I'll go to that poster quickly. I might go with looking through the list, maybe forecasting. So you can get them to predict next lesson. What do you think, guys, we're going to do? Or post-it note summary. So on the door or on the whiteboard, they have to actually stick down maybe 3 things they learned in this lesson, 2 questions they have, and 1 word summary or anything like that. And then in that way, I'm using the poster to add variety to my lessons. I have many ideas and instant access to them. I just have to glance at this poster that I generated with ChatGPT and go, okay, I'm going to do this if the lesson ends early. I'm going to do this to start the lesson. This is the homework they're going to get today. This is how I'm going to present the topic. This is how I'm going to get them to practice the topic. Another one I actually added that I haven't added here is communicative activities. So I might come to the bottom and say, add 10 communication or add 10 speaking activities to this list. Because in every lesson, they should ideally be doing some form of communicative language work. So here we have some of the most common speaking activities in TEFL. And I might say, okay, find someone who. So as my communicative activity in this lesson, they're going to go around the room and find someone who likes this food or someone who's tried this food before and so on. So I think this is a really nice idea. And there are so many ideas here. And I like having them in a poster. It's a big A3 poster on my wall that I can refer to very quickly or in the moment in a lesson. If I need a filler, have a quick glance at the poster and I go from there. Okay. And you could get ChatGPT to come up with anything. Here's the opening prompt, but you could add anything else to this. You could say, create a blank lesson plan template. And then it creates a template. You can print that template and then you can fill in that template for different lessons with different topics and use your poster with different ideas to fill in the lesson plan template. Or you could get it to create tests. I saw somebody there say that they use it for exam papers. That would be a great idea if you teach English for exams. Create an exam very similar to the Cambridge B1 reading exam, for example, and it will create a full exam paper that you can then adjust. You could take bits, or you could use the full exam paper with your students. There are so many things that you can do with ChatGPT. It's about having a go, experimenting, and seeing how it works for you. But just by way of conclusion, because I see we have gone a little bit over, so I do apologize. But I would say here, don't get overwhelmed, don't doubt yourself, and just start having a go and seeing what it can do for you, because it already has dramatically changed education as we know it. It is here to stay, and teachers very much have a responsibility towards their students, but more so for their own sake, to start engaging with it, to start understanding how it can be used, because it will make your lives a lot easier. It will improve the educational experiences of your students. It can be a win-win for everyone concerned. But I think that's it for today, everyone. Thank you very much for coming. An hour is nowhere near enough time to cover this very comprehensive and important topic, but do some reading on it. In our Tuesday support sessions on Zoom, I'm also very happy to talk more about this topic. If you haven't been to one of those support sessions, they are every Tuesday at 6 p.m. I run them every fortnight, and then my other colleague, Laura, from the academic team runs them the opposite Tuesday. And they're there for you if you ever want to talk to us about your course, or if you ever just want to chat about anything TEFL related. But thanks, everyone. I'll hang back for a couple of minutes at the end in case anyone has a question they didn't get to ask me today. And I wish you all the best of luck with your TEFL careers, and hope that you start experimenting with ChatGPT and other AI.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Great.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Chris, thank you very much. It was very informative. Thanks a lot, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you, Salim. No problem.
Bye, everyone.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Bye. Thank you,
See you
Luke.
soon. You're
Say
very
hello.
welcome, Lorena. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Say hello to Laura for me. I was actually thinking about her a couple of weeks ago.
You should pop in one day and say hi.
I will. Bye-bye. Have a great week.
Bye, Lorena. Nice to see you.
Okay, can always never remember how to get out of here.
Tessa, I see your hand up.
Yeah. Hi, Luke, can you hear me?
Yes. How are you?
I'm fine, and yourself?
I'm good.
Just a bit of confusion. A couple of us received an email, and our local time was an hour after the actual Zoom started. So we all missed the entire webinar. So I think Chelsea is also on the line, and she's had the same problem. Sorry, I don't know how to put this video of mine, so you're going to see a blank. But anyway, the question is, is there a link that we can that will be shared to us so that we can actually see this entire webinar again?
So I have recorded it, and I'll stop the recording in a couple of minutes, and the recording will be shared with you, so you will be able to watch the full thing.
Okay.
But
well, that's
we do
great.
apologize about that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It's okay. As long as we get the information, it's okay. So,
but it's all in the recording.
Yeah,
thanks, Tessa.
I caught the end of it. So, I mean, it was something I really think that would really help me. So, yeah, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Okay, thank you.
Bye. Have a good week.
You as well. Bye.